Evening News.
Good evening, I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. Government and the largest public sector union are on the verge of a salary and wages agreement. President of the National Union of Public Workers, Akani McDowell, said the union met for an hour this morning to discuss a proposal for wages increases submitted by the Ministry of Civil Service.
The majority of councillors agreed with what the Ministry of Civil Service was proposing, but we decided to submit our proposal to the Ministry of Civil Service, which is in line with what they are suggesting. So once the Ministry of Civil Service approves the proposal that we submitted, it would mean that public servants should be a little happier going forward.
Okay, so you're comfortable that everything will work the way you want it?
Yes, I am. I mean, there's not much difference between what the Ministry of Civil Service has presented to us and what the NUPW has suggested. So it's very unlikely that they would not accept what we are suggesting.
Mr. McDowell says the level of consultation since the change of government has been refreshing.
The mere fact that the Prime Minister has dedicated to having constant consultations and is as I said to you, is a good sign, and it augurs well for our relationship going forward. What is even more impressive about the tone of the meeting is that she's willing to listen. Before, you had a situation where ideas would have been put forward, but you weren't necessarily sure whether or not people were, the administration was willing to accept those ideas.
3 Barbadians have filed a petition with an international human rights agency challenging 2 Barbadian laws which speak to buggery and serious indecency. The trio, a trans woman, a lesbian, and a gay man, believe the existence of these laws violate a number of human rights. Sharika Griffith reports.
The 2 laws in question are Sections 9 and 12 of Barbados' Sexual Offences Act. Section 9, which was first enacted in 1868, criminalizes buggery, which the courts define as anal sex, whether it's between men or men and women. Section 12, on the other hand, speaks to serious indecency. This law was first enacted in 1978 and refers to any act involving the use of the genital organs for the purpose of arousing or gratifying sexual desire. LGBT activist Alexa Hoffman, who is the lone petitioner whose identity has not been withheld, explains why they are challenging the law.
The problem that was found, which brought up the need for the petition, is that it invades the right to privacy, it invades freedom of expression, and it is basically just affronting to the dignity of consenting individuals, because basically you have a law that's essentially doing like a big brother is watching as you're, in the privacy of your own home with a consenting adult.
The trio therefore sent off a petition to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. However, counsel for the legal network Maurice Tomlinson says the Commission does not have the authority to issue a binding decision for Barbados to repeal the laws. What it can do is make a recommendation.
If, however, it issues a recommendation to Barbados to get rid of the laws, and Barbados does not, then the Commission can take Barbados to the Inter-American Court. So Alexa will then drop out of the picture, her counsel will drop out of the picture. It will just be the Commission and Barbados before the Inter-American Court, right? At that stage, the court can make a decision, which then is binding in law on Barbados.
Mr. Tomlinson also explains that the case cannot be tried in the local Supreme Court because of what is known as the Savings Law Clause in the Constitution.
The law says that if it existed before independence, it cannot be challenged domestically, right? And that's the challenge here in Barbados. Unless the parliament in Barbados was to change the law, it cannot be challenged here. And let's be honest, in the current context, I'm not sure that the parliament in Barbados, even though it has a super majority, is willing to tackle this issue.
He adds that because the Commission believes in friendly settlement, there will now be an exchange of a lot of information, followed by a hearing, and finally a ruling. There's no set timeline for this, and therefore the matter could go on for years. However, based on the Commission's decision on a similar matter in Trinidad, Mr. Tomlinson predicts that the court will find Barbados to be in violation of the American Convention on Human Rights and instruct that the laws be removed from the books. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
The Barbados Cropover Festival 2018 will continue as planned. Word of this from the National Cultural Foundation. Following an extensive briefing session with Minister of Creative Economy, Culture and Sports John King and the new Permanent Secretary to the Ministry, Deborah Payne, it was confirmed that the season will commence with the scheduled events on the official calendar. Minister King again articulated his intent to support the initiatives previously planned for the current festival and his confidence in the competence of the team to execute a successful production. With this announcement, the Cropover events will kick off on Sunday with the BTPA Cropover Heritage Bus Tour in association with Carmitas. On a sad note now, the Calypso fraternity in Barbados is mourning the loss of a major figure. Barbadians woke up to the news that Charles Romeo Smith had died. Lisa Broom has more.
Them juvenile on the run, armed with their ratchet knife and a gun. So I must ask the question, are we still gem of the Caribbean? Tell me.
In that 1981 song, Romeo was talking about his beloved island Barbados. But today, his colleagues say the melodic refrain, "Gem Gone," can easily be used to refer to his passing. Fellow Calypsonian Smokey Burke says the loved man was a modern-day pioneer of the art form.
With people like Gabby, Sudan, Viper, Destroyer, and Edric Jordan. For some reason, his stage name isn't coming to me. Griner, all those guys were around in the 60s and brought Calypso to the masses. By the time the 80s came around, then they were all popular so I see them all as modern-day pioneers.
Cultural Ambassador Anthony the Mighty Gabby Carter says it was his boyhood friend, Romeo, who encouraged him to get involved in Calypso. In fact, Gabby says he and Romeo were practically inseparable.
We married to two cousins, so his children are related to my children. And he was one of my stalwarts in Battleground Tent, right through both from the administrative side as well as from the singing and producing side. And I had a real shock to me because I spoke with Romeo by WhatsApp up to 2:45 yesterday evening. And he was telling me how he thinks I was the greatest singer in Barbados and this and that and the third, and and that we were friends forever.
I see the things were happening here in my land. For me to walk up and wine, play mass and break away. I wonder if that's really been patriotic to hear.
He says Romeo was one of the island's best songwriters and was equally humorous as well.
People say Romeo talk. Romeo's voice was such that he would give you that story and the rhythm and the feel, the phrasing that Romeo had. Not many of us had. Romeo used to work at a place called Cold Sprintery, which is now defunct. And he would print all the tickets for us and the flyers and this and that and plan. Romeo always say, my God, this should be a business, it shouldn't be just people making sport and coming, attend and laugh and something. Yeah, this is a business. Romeo say all the time, we just do the show and forget the business. It names show business.
Chairman of the National Cultural Foundation, Cranston Brown, says they interacted during Romeo's days in the Battleground Tent.
I was an avid tent follower at that time, and I was in the heat of Cropover most of the time. As you would know, the Cropover band and the Pale Fets. So we had a lot of opportunities to interact and talk. And he was always a very nice person and always very, respectful and really nice person. That is how I can sum it up.
In a brief call to Romeo's residence early this morning, family members told CBC that the 70-year-old was preparing to make his usual morning call to CBC's Q100.7 FM when he complained of feeling unwell. Later in the day, his wife of 47 years, Cecile, says the family is trying its best to cope, knowing he would want them to be strong. Although they were married for 47 years, Romeo and Cecile were together for 52 years. Together, they have two sons, 3 grandsons and 3 granddaughters, along with 2 great-grandsons. Cecile wants people to remember the loved man for his positive quotes on radio on mornings and to keep the family in their prayers. Lisa Broom, CBC News.
Culture Minister John King says it is a sad day as Barbados has lost one of the great sons and pioneers of Calypso. In his tribute, Mr. King says Romeo, who was a mentor to many, willingly showed the young artists the ropes of the industry.
Romeo will go down in history as one of the great pioneers of Calypso in Barbados. I remember in the early days of my own career, he was there for giving me a lot of advice, and also I would spend a lot of time in Queen's Park at rehearsals when we were going semi-finals and finals and watching him rehearse. You know, I learned so much from just watch how he used the microphone, and one of the things that was most impressive about him was he always mentioned to me whenever he had the occasion about the importance of how you dress going on stage. And anyone who knows Romeo, he was always sharp, sharp, sharp. And so it's sad for the Calypso fraternity, but I think his work will speak for itself. And I think that when the historians begin to write, that his name will be mentioned in a good place.
The Culture Minister explains Romeo will definitely be honored during the Cropover Festival.
We're going to have to find some way to honor Romeo during the course of this festival, and I will indeed be having my own discussions with the NCF to see how we can make this happen. I have an idea in my head already, but I will leave it to the experts at that point in time to see how we can execute it. But it has to be done.
And Cranston Brown, of course, is the CEO of the NCF. Opposition leader Bishop Joseph Atherley believes government could have considered alternate appointees to the Senate rather than having to amend the Constitution. While supporting the amendment during debate in the first session of the House yesterday, he did, however, sound the word of caution to the ruling administration.
This is an awkward situation. I understand the pressures of the moment, and therefore we're minded to support the government in its attempt today to amend the Constitution to allow for an action which the government desires to take. But momentary convenience should never be one of the dynamics, one of the elements that guides a government because of its majority numbers in the direction of seeking to take action for that momentary convenience.
The opposition leader adds that one of his concerns was that the appointees in question would not have shared directly in the pain endured by Barbadians over the past 10 years.
Though the claim to citizenship must be acknowledged and given that primacy of which I spoke, the truth of the matter is Barbadians have gone through 10 years of pain. These two individuals have lived outside of that experience. And there are still 200,000 odd Barbadians, from among whom the government could still have chosen 2 senators. I believe that this government, with its numbers, must use those numbers to effect some significant changes to the Constitution of Barbados that relate to political reform, electoral reform, parliamentary reforms.
Sargassum seaweed on the southeastern section of the island is forcing a popular resort to make alternative arrangements for its guests. Many say it's the most they've ever seen at that beach. Here's Kareem Smith.
Just weeks ago, the crane here in St. Philip was the subject of much controversy over access to the beach. Today, it is virtually a ghost town due to the mounds and mounds of seaweed present here. Just look at it. A tourist at the Crane Resort could only watch from above as Mother Nature took its toll on the beach, rated by some as the best in the world. The light pink sand was covered with soggy brown seaweed, and the smell just made matters worse. General Manager Sean Allen says the beach was in pristine condition late Sunday night. However, guests woke up to the shock of their lives on Monday.
We haven't seen a build-up like this since the Sargassum seaweed started to come upon our shores in 2011. So it was quite a shock to us.
What has the response been from your guests?
Well, we've gotten mixed response. Some people understand that it's an act of nature, and some people would come and some people would actually check out.
Some of those visitors who chose to stay were outside of the lobby, waiting to be transported to other beaches, compliments the resort.
We used Pirate Cove yesterday, and today we are shuttling our guests to Harbor Lights. We've also put a number of incentives in place around the resort that persons can enjoy beverages and stuff at discount cost for the inconvenience that they're presently experiencing.
Sharice Nemhard, a visitor from New York, is disappointed about the seaweed but understands it's a problem beyond the resort's control.
Today we're going to take the shuttle and go to an alternate beach. Yesterday we went to the beach. It was near Oystons. I forgot the name of the beach, but we were able to go to the beach yesterday. But still, it was sort of an inconvenience because being at the crane, we can do everything here. We don't need to leave the property to go to the beach, nor the pool, nor restaurants. So we like that.
Does this particular experience change your view of the crane or the possibility of you coming back?
It does not change my view at all. Again, this is an act of nature. So basically, you just have to go with it. We will be back.
The seaweed, which has blanketed many sections of the country's southeastern and eastern coastlines, is also affecting marine life. While at the crane, we saw what appeared to be a large dead or dying creature being beaten against the rocks. Others reported having to remove turtles from the seaweed. Many in the area believe the seaweed could subside in a matter of days, but the crane is repairing machinery to prevent it from coming on shore in time for the high tourist season. The GM, however, says issues of this magnitude need national attention. Kareem Smith, CBC News.
Thank you, Kareem. After the break, we'll check in with some of our regional neighbors.
Across the Caribbean, brought to you by CIBC First Caribbean.
Guyana's President David Granger has been explaining the country's public sector union why his government has not been able to give public servants a significant salary increase. The details in this report.
President Granger said that while there has been some increases, it is his view that better will be done in the future. The government last year increased the minimum wage from $55,000 per month to $60,000 and also offered staggered salary increases to public servants based on their pay grades. Public servants earning between $55,555 and $99,999 received an increase of 8%, while a 6% increase was approved for persons who earned between $100,000 and $299,999. Those making $700,000 to $799,999 received a 2% increase. For those earning $800,000 to $1 million, a 0.5% increase was offered. Public servants working for more than $1 million did not receive an increase. In his address to the Public Service Union on the occasion of their 95th anniversary, the president explained the reason his government could not significantly increase the public sector salaries.
And also salaries have increased, not as much as you would like. But when you are faced with a situation in which you're bailing out an ailing industry at nearly $1 billion a month, you realize that money is hard to find.
Mr. Granger said it is his wish that public servants earn a decent living wage, but because of the state of certain sectors, his government has no other option but to be mindful of how it manages its finance.
And I don't want to be faced with the type of situation one of my colleagues is faced with in the Caribbean, in the West Indies there. I've never seen such a tale of woe. But we have to be prudent in the management of our finance.
In Trinidad, a report by a UK firm that 2 ferries were dilapidated and in a dangerous state never officially reached the board nor the ministry. The question as to why the report was never brought to the board's attention despite 2 managers unofficially receiving the documents could not be answered. However, the Works and Transport Minister says legal advice is being sought to determine if any action can be launched.
A March 2018 newspaper report saying 2 ferries continued to operate the Port of Spain Scarborough Sea Bridge despite a survey 8 months earlier saying the vessels were in a dilapidated and dangerous state. The survey was undertaken by UK firm Inserve Risk Engineering Limited, but when questioned about the inconsistency, Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan today tells the upper house they were in the dark.
I became aware of the article in the newspaper, of which I asked for a full investigation. What was sent to me by the Port Authority is a letter from the insurance company indicating that they did the inspection, as said before. However, that was not made a part of the official documents of the Port Authority.
None knew, he said, of the report and its contents aside from 2 persons.
It was indicated by the insurance company that unofficially they gave 2 managers of the port copies of the report, which were never tendered to the board nor the ministry. It did not become part of the files at the Port Authority. However, those 2 managers are no longer employed at the Port Authority.
But who does the report belong to, and was it mandatory it be handed over to the board?
I am advised that the report in question was a confidential commercial document produced for the insurance of the vessels. Moreover, having regard to the fact that the report was not formally submitted to the commissioners of the Port Authority or to the Line Ministry, legal advice must be sought to determine whether any action can be taken against anyone.
The minister says, as it stands, the vessels meet all the required regulations for service.
A peek into the world of sports is up next, but before we get there, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
Across the Caribbean, brought to you by CIBC First Caribbean.
Of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Some triggers of asthma attacks include the house dust mite, cigarette smoke, pollution, pollen, and respiratory infections and colds. This tip is brought to you in association with the Asthma Association of Barbados.